In today's episode of Willful, filmed at the Merchant Tavern, we spoke with Nick Babatsikos, an actor, singer, comedian, and all-around force of nature. Did you have a role that came along that really you could sink your teeth into, and you weren't just an extra, but it was the first time someone said, you're the perfect person for this role, inhabited?
Truthfully, I think it was, as you mentioned, it's funny that you referenced Coffee Garden Night #2. I think I developed that myself, and I think it was when I found what I kind of gifted that to myself, and I developed that show, and that was my moment because I actually wrote it.
Tell our viewers a little bit about what I'm talking about. You wrote a script?
Yes. No, it was so I was in the conservatory program at Second City, which was one of the best years of my life. It was honestly the most fun I had ever had on stage, and it was a year-long process where you go through developing as a cast, and you through under the Second City tutelage, you take a year and you learn what it's like to develop a main stage show. So for the first couple of months, you develop as a cast, you improvise together, you really kind of bond. Then you do an archive set where you pull out scenes from Chicago, Second City, or from Toronto, and you do a show based on that. You learn the scenes, you perform them, and then after that you start to write your own show.
So that's what you did.
And that's what we did. So we collectively came together and we developed our own shows, and one of the first scenes I had ever pitched, actually, I think in the first month that we had gotten together and we had a show coming up, and I had this idea. I was looking for a new agent at the time. Like I said, I was kind of going at it full force, and I was getting back out there, and I was going over my resume and looking at some of the acting teachers that I'd studied with, and while 95% of them have been amazing, and we have, like I said, such an incredible community of performers and teachers in the city, there were a couple that raised a couple of eyebrows or a couple of question marks, and I thought to myself, what did I really learn there? And there were a couple of crazy personalities that you come across as well. So I started playing with it in my mind, and this character I was at home, and this character kind of popped up into my head, and I started reciting lines in my apartment, and I thought, this is funny. So the next week I went up to our director, Ashley Botting, who's a tremendous performer in the city, and she's very well respected, and she was actually in a hit Fringe show called Cam Baby over the summer where she got raves, and I said, I want to pitch this, and she was always great about this. She was like, don't tell me, put it up there. We would come in and somebody would tell her an idea, and she was, I don't want to hear it, just put it on stage, play with it, and then we'll go from there. And that was, I think, one of the best things she did for us as a cast. So I said, I just want you to put it on stage. So I kind of went to the cast members. I said, this is the idea. Let's improvise this. I'm going to be this deranged acting teacher.
Yes.
And we went up, and it landed. It hit, and it hit hard. And Ashley, who's got a great eye, just said, okay, that's great. I love it. Now let's have him be a little more resentful of Canadian drama, because he's this broken down actor who's teaching high school. And she kind of gave me some direction. So I went away for a week, and I came back, and we put it on stage in kind of like this mini stage at the Second City Training Center. And there was about 60 people in the audience, and it just blew up. Like, the scene hit. It was the first time we kind of put it in front of an audience. A week later, we all improvised it. Unfortunately, 95% of the dialogue is mine, because I'm this overbearing, obnoxious acting teacher. And the scene just exploded, and it went really well, and that was the first scene that we set for the show.
Wow. Nick, what do you know now that you didn't know 15 years ago?
That who you are is, that's basically the only thing you have to offer. Like, it's like you can't, like I said, I went on this journey of losing 165 pounds when I was 21, trying to change, trying to become someone else. And I was even unhappier then than I was when I started, and it was only when I just kind of here I am, soup to nuts. You got me. This is it. This is who I am. You're either gonna book it or you're not. I can't change it. I can't alter it for you. It was only when I really kind of discovered that and said, no, this is who I am, and I can make it funnier, and I can put it in weird situations. But at the end of the day, if I'm gonna be a rock solid actor, it's because I'm myself. And I'm making it as organic and as honest as possible. And when I was in my early 20s, I had one teacher tell me, you're on the cusp of being really wonderful or really terrible. It'll be interesting to see which way you go. And I hated her. She was a terrible teacher. But that was, I was too young. Once again, 21, 22.
Material, Nikki, material.
Yeah. She was actually one of the people that ended up kind of being morphed into that acting teacher. But I didn't understand that. But now, but when I was able to come back and just be me, I've gotten the best accolades I've ever gotten as a performer, and the directors have always come up to me and said, I love that, and that was so real, and that was so honest, and you were great. And so all the best feedback I've ever received for my performances are when I'm being me on stage, and I'm just acting, and I'm still you're performing, you're developing a character, but you're still you, and I'm not trying to run away from that. I'm not trying to conceal that. I'm just accepting it. So
I always try and figure this out myself as a freelance writer, Nick, but maybe I can get a tip from you. How do you deal with the sort of the feast or famine aspect of being a freelancer? Because it's so unpredictable.
It really is. You just accept it. Once again, like you just say, this is like you don't get too upset over it. You know that around the corner is something great. I think it's that hope.
Yeah.
That kind of hope that around the corner it could be your next big. Like I did a show, my first equity show, which was last year, which was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, and it got me my card, and it was a great paying gig, and I originated a role of a play that was written and performed in LA in Canada. It was a huge experience, and I loved it. And that literally was my agent calling me up and saying, "We submitted your sketch reel. They loved you. You're booked." It came out of nowhere. I didn't know the show existed. I barely knew Thunder Bay existed, and I didn't know that I had been submitted for it, but literally I got a phone call 2:30 in the afternoon saying, "You booked this, do you want it?" And so that could happen at any time. It could really.
Yeah, and this was, just so our viewers know, this play was, there's a Moose on the Loose?
It's called Moose on the Loose,
Moose
yeah,
on the
and it
Loose.
originated in Thunder Bay. It's actually opening up with a new cast now in Sudbury in January,
Okay.
so it'll be exciting to see which direction they take it, but it was I was very proud of the performance. I know it went very well. The show itself was a huge success. It sold out the first 2.5 weeks it was there, and ended up getting extended another week. It broke box office records in Thunder Bay. It was like, and the community there were people who were coming back and seeing it 2 or 3 times. They just loved it.
That's great.
And I got to work with these incredible Canadian actors who I learned so much from, and I just played so well with, and yeah, we had these great stories and these great times, and I got beat up quite a bit because of that show.
I was going to ask you what your definition of success is, but I think you've just done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nick, thank you for being willful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.